Samira recalled that Salwa was also married at 13, and had been with a husband for 12 childless years until the jihad claimed him. After his death, she decided to live with her mother-in-law, Sakina, who now had no one to care for her. At the time when Samir and Samira entered their lives, Salwa was just 27 years old, very young and very beautiful with a tall and sensual body. She was very sweet and friendly. In short time, Samira became her friend. As the days passed by, the two friends became just like real sisters. They loved each other, enjoyed one another's company, and their souls knitted together. Samira tried to convince Salwa to look for a life partner. Salwa told her friend that she had decided never to marry again. She explained that the reason behind her decision was her mother-in-law. She knew that if she got married, her new husband would take her away from Sakina, and she didn't want that to happen. Sakina was an old woman and she needed someone to take care of her in her old age. Samira appreciated the selfless decision, considering it altruistic and noble. The relationship between Sakina and Salwa was no longer mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, but rather one of mother and child. In that, Samira saw parallels of Naomi and Ruth. Nevertheless, one day Samira found Sakina and Salwa in the midst of a serious discussion. It seemed that Sakina was trying to convince Salwa to do something that she was not keen on. It aroused her curiosity and she instructed her interpreter to translate. "I told you already I don't want to marry him. For how long will he keep bothering me with his proposals? He likes you and he promised that he won't take you away from me. What is the guarantee? Man can say anything before marriage, but when he gets the woman he will start dictating his terms to her. But, my daughter Salwa, you are so young and you need a man. People already began to speak against me. They said that I am a selfish woman and I am keeping you with me as an unpaid maidservant. I am like your own daughter and I love you as my own mother. If not for this reason, I would have gone back to my parents' house as soon as my husband Khalid had died as a martyr in the south of Sudan. Even my mother asked me many times to come back, but I refused to listen to her. I know all that, my daughter, but as a mother I want you to be happy. Who knows, maybe Allah will give you children with him. He already had many children. What difference it makes if he gets children with me? After all, every man is after the beauty and body of the woman. As soon as she grows older he will look for another younger woman. I have talked to you again about him, because he has sent to me Hajj Nazrak and asked her to remind us of his proposal. Tell her to tell him that Salwa doesn't want to marry any man again." Samira warmed up to the idea that Salwa could remarry and still live with Sakina. The idea of many children did not sit well with her. She suspected that her suitor may already have a wife or wives. Samira decided against asking more since the matter was already settled with Salwa's rejection. She dearly hoped that Salwa might one day meet the right man and marry him. Since Sakina and Salwa did not involve her in their discussions, Samira did not ask about it. Little did she know that this issue was soon to become mainstream in the lives of the women. A couple of days later, Samira once again was jarred awake by loud shouts emanating from the women's section. The shouts were tinged with aggression, signaling a vicious fight. It was Samir who heard the fight first and then woke his wife up. Samira immediately summoned her interpreter and the two women rushed to the women's section. Upon arrival, Samira saw two of the three rival wives of the polygamist Haj Osman were physically attacking Salwa. Sakina was trying to stop the two women, but due to her advanced age she couldn't. Samira could not believe her eyes when she saw those two furious women knocking Salwa down, jumping on her back and hammering her mercilessly. For 6 months, Samira knew that those three rival wives were the best friends to Sakina and Salwa. Their relationship even surpassed friendship, bordering on siblingship. How such a wonderful friendship erodes into bitter enmity and lead to such a bloody fight. Whatever the reason might be, it should not lead to that level of hatred and conflict. Overcoming her shock and disbelief, Samira ran to Salwa's rescue. It was clear to her that death would be the result without her intervention. She caught hold one of them and forcibly pulled her off Salwa's back and pushed her away. The other, she pulled off by the hair until the woman screamed from the pain. Salwa, free at last, came to her feet and assaulted one of the women and pushed her against a tree and began to beat her on her face and head. The other wife recharged and resumed fighting once again. All those movements happened in a fraction of a second so that Samira could do nothing to prevent them. Nonetheless, she rushed towards them and joined the fight. The fight became the two rival wives on one side against the two friends, Salwa and Samira. The interpreter decided to keep herself out of it. She had no intention of involving herself in a dispute, the cause of which was unknown. She stood in a corner and continued to watch the four women. Meanwhile, Sakina was trying in vain to put an end to the fight. She kept begging the two rival wives to stop the fight and discuss the matter verbally. The two wives were struggling to free their bodies from the strong hands of Salwa and Samira. Before Samira joined the fight, those two wives outnumbered Salwa and battered her. When they could not free themselves, they started to shower Salwa with the filthiest words she had ever heard in her life. She could not believe that those two wives could know and use such vulgar language. They called her prostitute, whore, bitch, slut, she-dog, bastard child, uncircumcised girl, and they her and her mother and father. The one under Salwa's control somehow got chance on her shoulder and began to bite her until Salwa screamed for help. The loud screaming of Salwa brought a man inside the women's section. Samira had never seen that man before. He was holding a long whip on his right hand and a big stick on his left hand. Without uttering a word, the man ran for Salwa's rescue and began to scourge the wife who was biting her shoulder. 3 heavy stripes caused the wife to let go of Salwa's shoulder and ran for her life. The man still reached her with his stick and hit her twice on her buttocks. The wife managed to escape and ran toward her house. Before he reached out for the one who was fighting with Samira, she also succeeded in freeing herself and took off like a fired rocket. The man still ran after her and caught her before she disappeared in her house. He hit her several times with his whip until she fell on the ground. He continued to whip her everywhere, causing her to squirm like an earthworm, screaming at the top of her lungs. Samira did not know whether to run for her life or to rescue the wife. Sakina went to them and begged the man to stop beating his wife. At this time, Samira guessed that this was the husband of the 3 rival wives. She heard a great deal about him, but had never seen him before. Oddly, the man listened to Sakina and stopped hammering his fallen wife, but he still kicked her and spat on her face. He ordered her to get up and go inside his house. The wife sprang off the ground like a yo-yo and fled as if a lion was chasing her. After that, the man walked out the women's section and entered his house without uttering a word of apology or blame. By this time, Samira made a second correct guess that the cause of that deadly fight was women's gossiping. But she did not know exactly what her friend had said or done that led to those 2 wives to come and assault her inside her house. She hesitated to find so soon the cause of the fight since the heat of conflict was still apparent on Salwa's face. Sakina also looked angry and tense. While Samira was thinking over what to do or say, she saw Salwa suddenly ran and stood near the fencing of the rival wife's house and shouted loudly, "Oh Haj Osman, I am ready to marry you. Go to my father and take him to the mosque and conduct our marriage contract right away." Samira was shocked to hear those words. Those words explained to her the reason behind the deadly fight that she tossed herself in it without knowing its cause. She knew that Salwa had spoken those words without meaning them because she had said them in anger. She also perceived that Haj Osman was not possibly going to take them seriously for the same reason. He had witnessed the fight between Salwa and his 2 wives and most probably knew the cause behind it. After that quarrel, no one was in the mood to talk about it. Salwa was very angry and refused to eat any food or drink any water. Samira knew the sensitivity of the matter and hence avoided talking about it to anyone. When she returned to her husband and told him about it, she was able to connect the dots. She remembered the serious discussion between the two widows about the mysterious proposal of the man who kept harassing Salwa about it. Samira understood that the man who was after Salwa and sent his proposal several times to her was none other than the polygamist, Haj Osman. What a shame, said Samira to herself rather than to her husband. How can that shameless old man even think about it? How can he think of marrying the best friend of his wives? Samira thanked God when she recollected that Salwa had already rejected his proposal several times, and she wasn't likely to change her mind. How could she even think of marrying a man as old as her father and having already 3 women under his roofs and 20 children? No woman would ever think of marrying such a man even if he was the last man on earth. The fierce fight between Salwa and her neighbors had brought a sad end to a wonderful friendship. They used to live together as one family. Before that fight, the 2 neighboring families were almost living in one big house. They ate together, played together, solved one another's problem, and helped each other in every possible way. But then, the door that connected the 2 houses was shut down. A fencing as high as the Berlin Wall was built between the 2 houses. Even the children were forbidden from crossing over to the home of Sakina and Salwa. The 2 widows felt the effect immediately. As if overnight more than 20 people had died in their house. Samira noticed how the breaking up of that wonderful friendship had clouded the faces of Sakina and Salwa with sorrow and filled their hearts with depression. They had no more friends to visit or to host. Sakina had lost her authority as a judge and advisor to the 3 rival wives. Salwa also lost the warmth of her friends and sisters. Before the fight, she used to spend hours and hours socializing with them. They used to play some games together such as snakes and ladders and Ludo. Though many Muslim women are imprisoned inside their houses and banned from venturing in the streets, some of them turned their homes into secret ladies' clubs and enjoyed the company of their immediate female neighbors. Some of them learned to play various games and cards and even used divination to predict their future events. Their great means of entertainment are gossiping and sharing meals together. Samira came to know through Salwa that the fight was caused by a gossip that a woman by the name of Haja Nasira had passed it from house to house. She was a talebearer like the devil who went around planting her evil seeds in the ears of the women. She was a jack of all trades, a matchmaker, circumciser, midwife, saleswoman, sorcerer, henna, one who applies henna, a secret pimp, and many more. She was the one who brought the last proposal of Haj Osman in which he asked for the hand of Salwa 7 times. This Haja also was a double agent with 2 faces. Knowing that Salwa had rejected the proposal, she announced to the rival wives that their best friend and neighbor had agreed to marry their husband. Wife number 3 happened to be outdoors, called away because of a death in her family. Salwa was a bit lucky to be attacked by 2 older rival wives. Nadia, wife number 3, was young and a great deal stronger. If she got mad, no one could control her. Samira divined the congenial relations between the 2 houses were terminated. The fight also had consequences for the warring parties. Salwa was the first to be affected. Her mother came visiting one day and brought the breaking news that her daughter, Salwa, had been given in marriage to Haj Osman. The marriage contract was conducted in the Grand Mosque and signed by Salwa's father, the bridegroom Haj Osman, the imam, and 2 male witnesses. On hearing the disturbing news, Salwa told her mother that she had never accepted his marriage proposal. She had made it very clear to her mother and everyone present at that time that she had rejected the proposal of that old man 100 times over and she was not going to allow him to touch even a nail on her finger. Seeking to placate her, the mother told her daughter that Haj Osman came to their house and swore under oath by placing his right hand on the Holy Quran that you said by your tongue in public earshot, that he should go to your father and take him to the mosque and conduct your marriage with him. Salwa countered that she had spoken those words in anger and she meant only to tease and hound his 2 wives who come, assaulted and beaten her inside her own house. The mother responded by saying that the Hajj had heard her words and took them seriously and acted upon them. Therefore, she was the one to be blamed and not him. For that reason, the mother believed that her daughter should accept the consequences of her words. The mother told her daughter that her words had reached the Grand Mosque and her marriage was conducted according to the Sunnah of Allah and His Messenger. No matter how much the mother had tried to convince her daughter to accept the consequences of what she said, still Salwa stood firmly on her decision that she would not accept such a marriage. The American couple thought that the firm decision of Salwa had nullified the validity of that marriage contract. For them, such a marriage contract shouldn't be considered having any form of legal validity because the bride's signature wasn't included in it. Nonetheless, they remembered that they weren't in America where the bride's signature is imperative for conducting her marriage. In Islam, no bride is allowed to sign her marriage contract. Her father and her bridegroom sign the contract without her presence. According to the Sharia law, a woman is utterly incompetent to enter into a marriage contract either herself or for another woman even though her guardian should authorize her to do so. Verma 1988, page 24. The American couple found out that the matter did not end up with the visit of the mother. It erupted again on the following day when Hajj Osman approached Sakina and demanded his lawful wife number 4. Salwa confronted him like an angry lioness and told him on his face that she wasn't his wife and she was not prepared to marry a man who was as old as her father and having 3 women under his roofs and hundreds of children. Hajj Osman did not argue with Salwa or beg her to come to his house. He simply took the matter to the Mu'allana of the Sharia court. He lodged an official complaint against one of his wives. In his lawsuit, he mentioned that his lawful wife number 4, Salwa bint Hajj Ahmed, refused to accept him as her husband. He attached a certified copy of their marriage contract to support his grievance. He also included 10 affidavits bearing the statements and signatures of 4 men and 6 women as witnesses. Those were the 10 witnesses that Hajj Osman claimed they had heard Salwa shouting loudly and requesting him to go and take her father and marry her at the mosque. In this matter, the Hajj wasn't lying. Those 10 people were other neighbors who secretly were peeping through the fencing of their houses and watching the deadly fight between Salwa and her 2 neighbors. Shortly after his complaint, Salwa received an official letter from the Sharia court ordering her to go to her husband's house as soon as possible. A copy of the same letter was mailed to the Hajj's address. Nevertheless, Salwa refused to follow the court's order and destroyed the letter. When Hajj Osman understood that Salwa was not likely to come peacefully to his house, he took the matter once again to the Sharia court. This time, he requested the Mu'allana of the Sharia court to issue the obedience sentence against his rebellious wife number 4, Salwa bint Hajj Ahmed. In Islam, the wife must keep her maiden name after her marriage. The Mu'allana of the Sharia court did not issue immediately the obedience sentence, but invited Salwa through an official letter that she should come on such and such date and appear before him. In his letter he also stated that he wanted her to come and tell in court the reason that prevented her from going to her husband's house. Salwa's case was treated differently by the Sharia court because she wasn't a virgin. The Sharia court came to know through the Hajj Osman's complaint that she was a widow who already married and deflowered by her late husband. According to the Sharia law, a divorcee or a widow should not be married without her consent. Her consent should be taken verbally before her marriage contract was signed between her father and her bridegroom. She was not allowed to sign her marriage contract. Her wali, father or guardian, was to sign the contract. The Sharia law dictated that, the virgin girl, no matter how old she was, her father had the right to give her in marriage without asking her permission. In other words, her consent was not an imperative as the case of the divorcee or widow. Samir and Samira were following the legal proceedings unfold with great astonishment. They could not believe that such a development could possibly happen in fairy tales, much less in real life. Nonetheless, on the appointed day, Salwa bint Hajj Ahmed went and appeared before the magistrate of the Sharia court, Mu'allana Sheikh Omar al-Badari. Sakina, Samir, Mona, and Zara accompanied her to the court. Neither her father nor her mother was prepared to come to the court and support her. Her parents and all her relatives considered her daring stand as disgrace to her and to her family. There is a saying in Sudan that if the wife goes to the judge and the watch to the repairer, both become useless. First of all, the magistrate of the Sharia court, Mu'allana Sheikh Omar al-Badari, informed Salwa bint Haj Ahmed that her marriage contract with Haj Osman Abd Allah was lawful and valid. It was concluded in the Grand Mosque between her legal wali, her father Haj Ahmed al-Bala, and the said husband, conducted by the Imam Sheikh Musa Muhammadayan Ibrahim and witnessed by two mentally sound Muslim men. He told her that the marriage contract bore the bona fide signatures of her father, husband, the Imam, and the two adult Muslim male witnesses. He also showed her the 10 affidavits bearing the statements and signatures of the witnesses who heard her verbal acceptance of the proposal. Then, the Mu'allana asked Salwa to give him one lawful reason that preventing her from joining her husband. Before she answered him, he reminded her that her reason should be lawful according to the Sharia of Allah and His Messenger. Salwa told him that she had rejected the proposal of Haj Osman several times and made it clear she wasn't interested in marrying him or any other man. Mu'allana rejected that reason and told her that she had shouted from her house to Haj Osman blah blah blah. Salwa admitted that she made that statement, but she did not mean it. The Mu'allana changed the topic and asked her very silly question. He asked her whether she slept with Haj Osman and found out that he was an impotent man. Salwa was so embarrassed by that question and remained silent. He also asked her another unnecessary question as whether her husband Haj Osman had deserted her for quite long time. As a matter of fact, Mu'allana had a list of reasons that he was made to memorize by heart when he was doing his Sharia laws at the Islamic school. If any one of them was answered in the affirmative by the wife, then she could have legal ground to leave her husband and apply for divorce. But, the judge of a court shouldn't be that stupid to ask questions which he knew had nothing to do with the case in question. There were only 3 lawful reasons under which the wife could seek divorce from her husband through the judge of the Sharia court. The Mu'allana had already asked 2 of them, and the third one if she lived with her husband and discovered that he was so poor that he could not buy food to feed her or buy clothes to cover her body. The husband didn't need any reason to divorce his wife or need to go to the Sharia court for granting him a divorce. He was required by the Sharia to say to his wife, "I divorce you," or "You are divorced," and voila! She is divorced. The Mu'allana asked his final question and answered himself. He asked Salwa whether she lived with her husband and found out he wasn't in good financial position to provide for her physical needs. Then, he told her that he knew that Haj Osman had 3 wives and 20 children, and none of his wife came to court and lodged a complaint of negligence against him. Finally, Mu'allana whispered few words in the ears of the 2 old men sitting on each side and then claimed that the court had reached a verdict. One of the 2 assistants was too old and therefore the judge had to shout loud in his ear. The other one fell asleep, and only when the judge came close to him he arose from his stupor. Then, the magistrate of the Sharia court, Mu'allana Sheikh Omar al-Badari, declared the woman under investigation faulty, and hence the court of God had found her guilty according to the Sharia of Allah and His Messenger Muhammad, and passed the Hukm al-Tat, the obedience sentence, against the disobedient wife, Salwa bint Haj Ahmed al-Bala.